1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Yeah.
Getting waveforms.
I'm not gonna get any louder than that.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right. I am supposed to be anonymous.
Okay. Do we really have to make your voice all,
No. Maybe change it slightly. Make me sound more feminine or something.
Okay.
Not that I don't already sound more feminine.
I'll just say that you're a woman, and we'll leave it at that.
Let's say that I'm a demon and let's leave it at that.
A demon? Okay, even better.
Hail Satan. It's all about rock and roll.
Welcome to Friends with Deficits. I'm your host, Adam Sultan, and my next friend is an incredible live sound engineer here in Austin, as well as a drummer, photographer, videographer, an all-around rock and roll guy. In fact, we don't even get to the real reason for him being on the show and his reasons for being anonymous until part 2 of this 2-part series, but don't skip ahead. I had no idea how extensive this rock and roll saga was, and you don't want to miss it. One note, you may hear a sound that is something like this. That's Grey Goose vodka on the rocks with some soda. His drink of choice, and he made a point of enjoying it throughout our very long conversation, which again is split into 2 parts. This is part 1.
You know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, when that statement was made, I was already living it. My introduction into my career and in my love was when I was in the 5th grade. Before that, I was just a dumbass little kid, had no idea what was going on. I grew up in the ghetto, in an abusive family. I was beaten, and there was, violence in the streets. It wasn't very good, and there wasn't very many places to go. But in the 5th grade, that's when I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, their first televised performance. And it was my sister that said, "You jackass, there's going to be the Beatles on TV." And I was like, "What? I don't know anything about Beatles." And just shut up and sit down. Fuck, okay. I sat down and watched the television. The Beatles came on and they played the very first time on national television. And I think it was "I Want to Hold Your Hand" or something. I don't remember. But I was transfixed. It was like seeing Jesus. Growing up Catholic, every day after school, and the nuns are going to teach you how to be a good boy, and then you have to go to the church, and at that time it was all in Latin, and fuck, I don't understand what they're saying. So religion, I had to believe it because there was nothing else to believe in. But once the Beatles hit, there was an out. They were speaking to me in English, playing guitars, and girls were screaming. Another thing that happened to me in San Antonio at that time is that my stupid sister said, "I'm taking you to the movies. We're going to go see the Texas premiere of A Hard Day's Night." "Okay, I'll go. And at the time, because we were living in poverty in San Antonio, you could go to the movies with 6 bottle caps, like Big Red or Coca-Cola or something. I can't remember what the big soda was at the time. But there was plenty of places to get bottle caps from the little mall near my house. I could just go and raid the soda machine to get bottle caps out. So we didn't get there late or anything, but by the time we got there, there was a line 2 blocks long to get into the Texas Theater to see the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night, their very first movie.
It's been a hard day's night.
It was a life-changing experience because the entire time that the film was on, the girls were screaming. It was just like an electric shock. Why is everybody screaming? It's just Paul McCartney's face as big as you can see it. So that was my introduction to to rock and roll is the Beatles and the songs, but more than that was the reaction of the fans, which is pretty much what rock and roll is all about. All you want to do is do something so wonderful and grandiose that everybody's going to love what you do. All you want your art to be is appreciated. Right after the Beatles happened, I learned about what it's like to be attracted to a girl. I had no sexual feelings before then, but after that, and the screams must have aroused some kind of primal urge in me. It's like, oh, there's
puberty.
Girls screaming at guys, so they must want the guys. So now the guys can have any one of them because they all are screaming for them. It took a little while for me to understand that that's what was going on, but I do remember the very first girl I fell in love with right after the Beatles. Her name was Irma Flores. She was in my class, and I was deeply in love with her, ready to kill myself, jump in front of a bullet in front of her. But you know what? I was afraid to talk to her. I would follow her home after school because we had to walk a mile home from the school that we were at back into my ghetto neighborhood, and she lived in the ghetto as well. And after I'd see her going in her door, I'd walk around the block and I'd go to my house. And then junior high hit. In junior high, I fell in love with this girl named Melba. You never hear that name. I fell in love with Melba when I was in junior high. And once again, I was very shy. I never said anything to Melba. All I did was admire her from afar. I hadn't even masturbated yet. I mean, I didn't even know what an orgasm was. All I knew was that I was crazy in love with this girl. You know, we went through all junior high and most of high school, and I lost contact with her after we graduated. I never ever spoke to her. I'm going to move forward and backwards in time all through this interview. I'm just going to go, because that's the way my mind works. I mean, I rush forward and then I rush backwards. Okay. So we're going to go into the high school part. So now I'm in high school, and you know, a bunch of crazy crap happened. You know, drugs and alcohol and police happened. And then after I popped out of high school, I went to a junior college and I got my degree in, well, I didn't get my degree, I failed, but I did learn everything I needed to know about RTF, radio, television, and film. And I just wanted to get out of there because I could not do the English classes or the math classes or any of that crap. I just wanted to get my RTF license, which is what you had to have at the time to work in radio. So I started working in radio, and I worked at a black radio station, and they only hired me because they needed to have somebody that was not black. And that was me. So I got a job at this black radio station playing soul music, and Off the Wall had just broken. Michael Jackson was just about to be a superstar, and all you had to do to be a DJ was play Michael Jackson and you were famous. So the telephone was ringing constantly during my performance, and it was people that were asking for, oh, can I say a shout out to blah, blah, blah? Can I say a dedication to blah, blah, blah? And I hated that. You might ask one of the other DJs, because I'm not going to do a dedication and I'm not going to do a shout out, but you know, anything else you want to talk about, that's cool. While the record's playing, and then I got to go. You know, there's a bunch of girls that call you on the phone when you're a disc jockey. They don't even know what you look like or how much you weigh, but they're say all this sexy stuff, and they want to talk to you, and they say nasty things to you, and yeah, I got used to it a lot. But this one particular girl kept calling me like weeks in a row, and so we would talk, and she really encouraged me to try to reach out and meet her after the performance. So after a few weeks of encouragement, and it didn't really take long because I think I was just 20 years old. And you know, when you're 20 years old, your dick is hard 24 hours a day. It's you just need somebody to touch you and that's over. All right, you can go now. But on that one particular night, I decide to meet this one fan. So it's really dark where she wanted to meet me. So I can see her silhouette from the light that she opens the door on. So I wave like, it's me. So she walks out and it's still dark and I can't see her. At the time I was driving this brand new car that I had able to buy with all my new job as a DJ, blah, blah, blah. So she gets into this brand new car of the year. Red velour seats, shiny black. Oh man, I've been dying to meet you. There's a park about 2 blocks from here. Let's go over there. So it doesn't take her but 5 minutes to start, putting her hands on me, and I'm making out with this girl, and I don't have a lot of experience at that time, but I'm thinking, wow, this girl, she's fine. She likes me, and it's still dark. So it's a park, so we get out of the car, and she jumps on the bumper, pulls her dress up, and now I can see her. And I said, what's your name? She says, my name is Melba. And then I get a good look at her, and I go, hi, Melba. Did you go to this particular high school? She said, yeah. How did you know? Were you in this particular class? Yeah. How did you know? And at that point, her panties are kind of about 8 inches down, and she's ready to go. And I looked at her and I said, I know your last name, honey. It's me. And I said, my name. And she looked at me and said, yeah, so? And I said, don't you recognize me? No. I couldn't believe it. This is the girl that I had a crush on for years. I loved her with all of my little virgin heart. And now here she is, being a complete and total slut over somebody she doesn't know other than she heard on the radio. So I had my opportunity to just nail her right there. But I looked at her and I said, I can't. Which is one of the few times that I said no to pussy. I said, you're too much a part of my upbringing and fantasy of love. You're walking home. I'm leaving. Nothing is going to happen now. I can't even get a soft on at this point. So she had to walk that 2 blocks home, and I got in my brand new car, and I couldn't, to this day, can never forget that my dream girl in high school was, I guess, just trying to find her way through life, was lonely and was just reaching out to some invisible face that all she could do was fantasize about. I really wonder sometimes if she remembers that moment, because I certainly do. Okay, so that happened in right after college. So after I was a DJ, I got a job at a discotheque. And this was 1976. I was still working at the radio station, and I found that disco had just broken. Discotheques were hot. So there was this discotheque about, maybe 6 miles from my house. It was called the Playpen West. So I went in, I said, I'm a DJ, I can work in your place and I can spin records. So they hired me. And so I started spinning records there 7 days a week. And it was the Ohio Players and Casey and the Sunshine Band, all that era in the 70s. Unfortunately, that club was a meeting ground for all the cocaine Mexican cartel. These were Mexican gangs, but not like pachucos with khaki pants and tangerine shoes and a wife beater. These were Mexicans that wore $1,000 suits and shoulder holster pistols. So the bosses would go there with their bodyguards, and the bodyguards, everybody dressed good. Everybody had a suit on, and it was the disco days, and all the girls wore spandex pants and lots of makeup, and it was my job to play loud disco music, so loud that no one could ever tell what was going on there. So I worked there for maybe a year and a half or 2 years until there was the big, I think the Express and News, the local paper there, called it the OK Corral in San Antonio. There was a big drug transaction that went bad between two rival cocaine Mexican gangs, and it came to a head one night, December 25th, 1977. There was somebody there that owed a huge debt and would not pay it. And this is back in the days of coin phones, where you had to put a quarter in to make a phone call. One of the bosses went and made a phone call, and he called his top hitman guy. And the top hitman guy came in about 20 minutes later. He was the only one not in a suit. He was wearing a windbreaker, a wife beater, and blue jeans. And when he walked in the door, I knew he didn't belong. And he had a face of a bulldog. And my DJ booth was right next to the door. And he walked in and he looked me straight in the eye, and he was dead to this world. I looked at him and I thought, he doesn't belong, but hey, let's all have fun. So he walked in and he connected with his boss, and within 10 minutes, there was a big shootout in that club. There was one man dead, and there was 3 persons injured, and I was one of them. I caught a 9mm in the leg. We all went to the hospital and some to the morgue. It was a big deal in San Antonio at the time because it was an assassination. And I was part of it only because I was there as the DJ. So once again, I'm in the music business, and now bullets are flying in my direction.
Oh my God.
Which is, I guess it's all part of the education.
Not everybody's.
But it's the Mexican San Antonio education of doing what it is that I do, following the scent of rock and roll. So I healed. I didn't lose my leg.
Do you have any issues with it now?
I don't even limp.
That's good.
I still have the scars, and they're right there, like millimeters from my what is it? My
kneecap.
My kneecap, yeah. So I didn't lose my leg, and the doctor said, well, had it been like 2 millimeters later, it would have blown that kneecap off, and it was all over. All right, so I'm still in San Antonio, being a DJ, but I don't think I brought this up, but I've been playing in a rock and roll band at the whole same time. I had always been like a fake drummer. I had made some drumsticks out of a piece of tree in my backyard, and you bang them on the pillow because it sounds like a really cool snare. And by the time I was in high school, I wanted to start a little band. So with the money that I made shining shoes and selling crap that I found on the side of the road, kind of like Craigslist nowadays, I was able to come up with enough money to buy a drum set. So I bought a drum set, and then I had no lessons, so all I did was just like bang, 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 and I had no idea what to do. And I was at a record store, and I'm a young guy, and I'm looking at the records and really not knowing what to look at because there was no internet at the time. None. If you wanted to know about rock and roll and music, you had to study. You had to read the magazines. You had to keep your ear to the ground. So I'm in the record store and I'm hearing da-da, which is the song 1 on Led Zeppelin 1. And I'm listening to it, and there's this really cute girl standing next to me, and I had to talk to her, and the only thing I could say was, "Who do you think that's playing?" And she goes, "That's Led Zeppelin. You haven't heard him before?" Now I have to buy the record. So, I dig out whatever little change I have in my pocket, and I go home with Led Zeppelin 1, and there's John Bonham playing drums, and I listen to that thing for like a year until it finally makes sense, is that the right hand hits the hi-hat as a rhythm, and the left hand hears the snare as the beat. And suddenly it was like, that's all I needed to know, is like snare and beat. And so I learned a very simple rock and roll beat. So then I started playing to all the rock records that I had, and I had a lot. This was like, play the album, play the drums, play the album, play the drums. So then I had a band in San Antonio, and we didn't have a singer. So I started singing and playing drums at the same time. But that's what got me into the career that I have now as an audio engineer. So the very first thing that I did when I was finally a singer in a rock and roll band is that I had to buy a speaker with a microphone and a volume knob. So then I had a little tiny PA. So we would practice in my parents' garage. God bless them. I mean, I earned it. My dad beat the fuck out of me, but I blew his eardrums out at one point or another. That's the only thing I can say that I got even. I never planned on moving into the house. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a plan. All I knew is that I love music and I want to play drums. But then I met some girl at a little place that I was DJing at, and she was really nice to me. And she goes, "Hey, I'm going to rent an apartment. You want to live with me?" And I was intoxicated at that time. And I said, "Sure." So I went home and I told my mom, I'm leaving. And she goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, I'm going to move into this little apartment like across a street from the club that I'm living at. She didn't say anything. Dad didn't say anything. And I just left. I didn't get a blessing. I guess they were just dying for me to leave. They couldn't afford to feed me, so I had to go. So anyway, I moved with this girl into an apartment. 8 or 9 months went through, it was all just alcohol induced. I had learned to drink vodka, which is not only a painkiller, but I think it is a career advancer. It gives you your dreams that you want to head into and to keep going to, and it just gives you a destination. At least when you're in your late teens or early 20s. So now I have a band and I have a little PA, and I'm headed into my future. San Antonio was not a great place to play original music. All the clubs in San Antonio, they all wanted you to play covers. And this was all 70s, so you had to know covers by Grand Funk Railroad, by Blood Rock, by... oh God, there was so many 70s bands. And then the Sex Pistols hit. 1977. They were playing right across the street from the Playpen West. And little did I know that was a giant turning point, not only for me, but for most of San Antonio music fans and Austin music fans, because I think the Pistols only played 7 or 8 shows in the United States. And one of them was in San Antonio, and one of them was in Dallas, Texas. And I was at both of them. Me being a cocky little kid, I was able to go in and see the Sex Pistols sound check in Dallas. I met Steve Jones, and I told Steve, "Do you like Jack Daniels?" Everybody loves in rock and roll like Jack Daniels. And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I have Jack Daniels in my car if you're thirsty." And he looked over and he said, "Sid, this guy does booze." So he came right over And me and my buddy took Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols and Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols in Dallas, and we went to our car, and we jumped in my car to open my bottle of Jack Daniels, and I tapped my buddy on the shoulder and I said, turn the car on and drive. So for maybe 40 minutes, we had Steve Jones and Sid Vicious in my car trapped, and we just got on the interstate and kind of just drove and talked and drank Jack Daniels until Steve said, I think we got to go back to the venue. And I said, oh, no problem, man, no problem. My driver's cool. So anyway, I drank Jack with Steve and Sid, and then we drove them back to the show, and they were able to make their concert, but Steve left his cowboy hat in my car. So that was my Sex Pistols story.
Wow. Not many people have the honor of kidnapping the Sex Pistols.
Fucking man, I don't know. There's probably a lot of girls that have that, but they had to do a lot more than just give them Jack Daniels.
Right.
One of my good friends, Ty Gavin, had just moved to Austin and started this band called The Next.
I've been thinking about.
And they were huge. Ty Gavin was 20 years old. He probably weighed 100 pounds. He was beautiful. He was a very handsome boy, and he could sing. And he said, you gotta come to Austin. It's the golden land. It's where you need to go. So eventually I got the clue, because a lot of the guys that were huge in Austin in the 80s were from San Antonio. A lot of the Butthole Surfers. The Next came from San Antonio. So on August the 10th in 1979, I took everything that I had. I had my drum set and my little tiny PA, and I moved to Austin to look for the rock and roll dream. I didn't have a job. I just went there. So I wasn't in Austin for any more than, maybe 8 or 9 weeks. And I met these guys at the Continental Club, and they said, hey, I heard you're a drummer. And I said, yeah, I'm a drummer. We're having rehearsals. We're gonna start playing at the Continental Club. I'm in. So I started rehearsing with this one band, and they didn't have a name yet. So I named it. I said, we're called the Jet Set, which was a great name for that time.
I like how you just have the name already.
I already had the name.
Here we go.
I can play drums. I can sing if I have to, but I had the name. And at that time in the 80s, none of the Austin clubs had a sound system. If you were going to play in that club, you had to bring in a little PA. And I had a little PA. So anyway, we played our show at the Continental Club as a Jet Set. And there was a lot of musicians there because the lead singer knew a lot of people. After the show was like, great band, great songs, but who owns the PA? And I said, it's me. I own the sound system. And the next word out of their mouth was, what are you doing tomorrow? Can we rent your sound system for tomorrow? So that's how the sound system business for me began.
Wow.
So right after that, I started renting my sound system out to all the bands that were playing at the Continental Club. And then it got to the point where I was renting my sound system 7 days a week. And at the time, I had no idea what the market was. You gave me $50 and I'd bring my sound system. And then I knew what my worth was, at least at the time. This was still in 1980 and early 81. But Austin was a much different town. Rent was really low. You could rent an apartment for $75. You could rent a house for $150. I was making rent on 2 gigs, and the rest was just money for booze and drugs and chicks and for everybody around, all my friends to drink for free. So from 1980 till 1985, I used all my money to continue to build a sound system and keep working. And so I worked for everybody, all the punk rock scene. Man, the Skunks always hired me, which is a huge band in the 80s. And then I started doing shows at the Ritz Theater, and there I did White Zombie, and I did the Misfits, and so I was doing shows for all these headliners with my sound system, and you know, the rate went up and went up. I was working every day, so I made a lot of money. And then a major venue in Austin was just changing names, and the booker agent talked to me and he said, "Would you like to put your sound system in my venue?" And I said, "No, I'm working every day and I'm making a lot of money. I'm making more money than I know what to do with it." And he says, "But you'll only have to put your sound system in one place and not move it out. This is a big event." And so I thought about it for a while, and I kind of put the numbers together, and I thought, well, I'll have to work a lot less but make a lot more money. So I finally said yes, because he said it'll only be for 6 months. And I said, for 6 months, yeah, everybody will be waiting for me to come back. So that 6-month opportunity turned into a 9-year resident at a major Austin music venue. And that's where I really learned how to be a sound engineer.
Can we say the name of the place?
Yeah, it was Liberty Lunch. It was a holy place. Everybody played there. Everybody on their way up played there. Nobody on their way down. I mean, we had everybody. We had Africa Bambaataa. Nirvana played there.
Fela?
Fuck
Fela
yeah.
Kuti? Yeah.
Everybody played there. And that's where I learned my chops. That's where I learned how good I could be and how much I could stand. There was some beautiful memories there. I met a lot of great people. I met girls that I had long-term relationships with. I met sound engineers that I had long relationships with bands. I met bands that that have died, that commit suicide. It's a rough business. But I really learned my chops at Liberty Lunch, and then I really drove myself into the ground at Liberty Lunch. After 9 years, most people aren't even married for 9 years. Oh yeah, and then I met this girl at Liberty Lunch. Her name was Angie. She worked at the local news television station, and she was part of the music scene, and this all makes sense again. Believe me, it sounds like a chasing a chicken, but it's not. It still leads me into the rock and roll life that I've had. So she met me at the lunch. She liked me. She became the girl that I was dating on the side of my real girlfriend. This is sex, drugs, and rock and roll, guys. I mean, I was a cheater for many years, and I admit it, and I'm not proud of it, but it's who I am and what I did. And I'm not the only one, so don't be pointing no finger. Okay, so, but Angie was a fantastic girl, very creative. And I went to her house, and we were watching MTV one night, drinking Jack Daniels at the time. And I said, I can do that. And she said, you can do what? I can shoot that video. And she said, of course you can. And she had a professional television camera in her truck. So I put my band together, and we recorded one song on a cassette. So we spent like 2 evenings at Liberty Lunch shooting my band, lip syncing to a song, and then we went to the television station editing bay to edit the song, and all they had was 2 effects: hard cut and slow motion. That's it. There was nothing else. So I had to do one of my songs in hard cut and slow motion, and I cut a music video for my band. Dave Pruitt had a television show on community access every night. So I gave him my tape of my band, and he would play it every night. So suddenly my band was huge because we had a video on public access. And then from that public access video, a competitive band named Pariah from San Antonio, from where I came from, just got signed to Geffen, which was a big deal. I mean, Pariah was on their way up. They were right behind Guns N' Roses. This is 1990.
I remember Pariah.
Pariah was huge, bigger than us. They were all good looking, and they had songs, and they had a huge female fan base, and they had seen the videos that I had for my band, and then that's when Pariah said, "You gotta make our video." So they gave me a budget, and guess what? The video was gonna be premiered on MTV Headbangers Ball worldwide. I'm just this guy from Austin. All I do is believe in rock and roll. I live and breathe rock and roll, and I've taken photographs, and I've made a couple of videos, and somebody gave me $10,000 to make an MTV video. So fuck, I did it. At the time, the back room, this was the heavy metal headquarters in Austin. And all the hard rock bands played there. And, Dangerous Toys and Motorhead played there. The Ramones played there. So we had shot this video for Pariah. And I didn't know it was going to be a Headbangers Ball. But they had so much push behind them. So we went, and we all were packed into that place. And they had big screen TVs. So we're all sitting there, and they're talking about all the videos they're going to show. It's Striker and blah, 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 blah. And they don't even mention Pariah. And I'm feeling kind of down because I invited all of my friends, and so did Pariah. And I think the show was an hour and a half. I'm sitting there having a drink going, oh my God, fuck, did I get the date wrong or something? And finally they said, on our last video, we're going to view a video by a brand new band, Pariah, out of Austin, Texas. And the audience went crazy. And I finally just took a breath of air and said, finally, it's okay. And they played the Pariah video. And for maybe 24 hours, I was a gigantic rock star. And then the Nirvana Wave came over us and ruined everything.
How so?
Because the back room was rock and roll hard rock headquarters in Austin. Everybody, every guy, every girl, they all had long hair. Everybody dressed in black. Girls were in short skirts. Guys had black pants. And then after Nirvana hit, I remember I didn't go there for a couple of months because I had my gigs at the lunch. And I came back to the back room, and suddenly all the guys that I knew, they were wearing blue jean cutoffs, Doc Martens, and they were wearing plaid shirts. And I thought, what the fuck what's going on? And everything changed overnight in Austin. Grunge hit, and hard rock heavy metal was over. My band's career was over. Pariah's career was over. It was hard to take. It was a big shock to me.
Did you like anything about that music? Nirvana and those kind of bands?
Well, Nirvana was a guitar band. And then there was Soundgarden. And they broke the one major rock and roll rule, which is, and I'm holding up the devil horns, do not wear shorts on stage. That is like the golden rule number one. Don't wear shorts on stage. So they broke all that, and God, it was hard to deal with. Because I grew up in a certain generation of rock and roll, and all of my friends did not. Change is hard. Change is hard. But you have to accept it, or you get lost in the back of the pack. I'm trying to change now. I have to pee.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I guess we'll let our guest do his thing, and then we'll be back in the next episode, part 2 of this rock and roll saga, The Journey of Being Loud. Hey, if you want to help support this show, keep it going, and also be part of a community that has access to the kind of insider scoop, outtakes, music, other things from the show, check out Patreon, patreon.com/Friends with Deficits. A small monthly contribution, even like $1 a month, really helps us out a lot. And again, you'll have access to things that we don't normally publish through these free internet podcasting streams. So check it out, patreon.com/Friends with Deficits. Until next time, I'm Adam Sultan. Rock and roll.